Eric Reid is back in the NFL. He was one of the NFL players who kneeled alongside Colin Kaepernick. In fact, he was the first one to join Colin Kaepernick. He was released by the San Francisco 49ers, spent all of training camp, did not get picked up by a team. But this week he was picked up by the Carolina Panthers. And at his opening news conference, he wore the shirt, "I'm with Cap," and addressed the issue of why he kneeled. Check this out.
Next year will be 2019. It'll mark 400 years since the first slaves touched the soil in this country. That's 400 years of systemic oppression. That's slavery, Jim Crow, new Jim Crow, mass incarceration, you name it. The Great Depression, they come out with the New Deal. Black people didn't have access to those government stimulus packages. The New Deal set up what is known as the modern day middle class. We didn't have access to those programs, the GI Bill, Social Security, home loans, none of that. So this has been happening since my people have gotten here. And so I just felt the need to say something.
Teresa, I love the history lesson Eric Reid gave to largely sports journalists who have gone alongside this silly narrative of Donald Trump of saying, well, it's all about the flag or the national anthem. I think even in that short bite there, folks were educated. And he said he is still going to find other ways to express himself. He may not kneel, but he said the Carolina Panthers also did not ask him not to kneel in order for them to sign him.
Absolutely. I think Eric Reid did what every athlete, entertainer, and musician is now doing with their platforms. They're not only using their voices to entertain, they're not using their bodies to perform. What they're doing now is actually putting themselves in position to actually impact. So as the Trump administration is actually removing the education and the history lessons from our curriculum, what Eric has proven amongst everybody else is now, look, now it's time to actually continue the education, starting from, the people that follow them. So again, using their platforms, using their hashtags, but more so using their voices to continue the education and to continue to strengthen our people. I think more so athletes, especially the ones of color, are noticing what's happening behind the field, right? And those are the untold stories we won't know because they're still on the field. So when they become retired, I'm interested in knowing what that tale looks like. But I think as of right now, as we look at kind of where America is taking us right now, it's taking us into a deep dialogue of education and a dialogue to inform and just really protect our community as a whole.
Spencer and Liz?
Yeah, I think it's just amazing in terms of young brothers and sisters really stepping up to the plate, not shucking and jiving, not just kind of entertaining here, but stepping up to the plate. And it's the symbolism, right, of the knee. It is the statement and the lesson of the history, but it's also the policy changes that we see these NFL players involved in on a state-to-state basis in terms of criminal justice reforms, voting rights restorations. We see tangible change as a result of their direct engagement.
Mm-hmm. I think it's
Liz, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that well, I agree. I agree that it's great that athletes and entertainers are taking a strong interest and participating in and using their platform to educate the masses. Like, we want everybody to be woke and stay woke. I think that it's interesting that he did highlight that he may not take a knee. And I think while he absolutely has a right, he has a constitutional right to stand, sit, kneel, do whatever he wants to do during that period of time, I support him having that constitutional right. I think that he is now pivoting away from the one thing that all of the critics of Colin Kaepernick had, and that was, you're disrespecting the flag or you're disrespecting the military. He's removed that, rebuttal from the conversation. And I'd be curious to know, to hear what opponents or detractors would have to say now.
Well, trust me, they will be running their miles. Before I go to my next piece here, Spencer, you have an event coming up, right?
I do. Thanks so much for asking. It will be at Wayne State Law School on Friday at 7:30. We're going to talk about racial equity and the future of work at the Damon J. Keith Center. I was fortunate enough to clerk for Judge Keith, and I'm excited to go back home to Detroit and talk about future of work and racial equity. How can we make a Wakanda in Detroit, in Gary, in Baltimore, in Atlanta, and in the black belt of the American South?